Hello and welcome to another episode of the Advanced Ball Striking Podcast. This is William Hanisch from New York, John Erickson, as everyone knows, from San Francisco area, and Neil Gascoigne from Newcastle, England. And last time we talked about the fundamentals mainly of the backswing, what are and are not fundamentals. This time we're going to talk about the more fundamentals, more on transition and the downswing, and comparing different types of swings and what we do here. And Neil, you have some more questions?
Yeah, so like you said, part one we talked about backswing and how not really that much is important. I think we came to the conclusion that the only thing that really were important was the big full shoulder turn and transferring the weight onto the right hand side. Um, so today, I think we're going to be ended up talking more about the releases. So John, you said last time that there's sort of two types of release: there's hitting and swinging. So I mean, do you want to go from there? I mean, what are the differences between hitting and swinging? Would be the first question, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I've covered this a lot, of course, through the ABS site, but so hitting, you have to look at what the club shaft is doing as it's coming into the strike. So there's two main objectives. One would be swinging. You're going to flex the shaft at transition a lot, and then that shaft is going to unflex on the way down. You're going to try and time the straightening of that shaft so that the shaft is in line as it's hitting the ball. So it flexes, and then you come down, and to do that, you need to be very it's more of a relaxed kind of letting it kind of glide down, and you're trying to not interfere in any way with the shaft straightening and using the centrifugal force to kind of straighten that out for you. And that's all these words like timing and stuff, that's all about, oh, my timing was off. Well, that's what people are referring to. If you're over accelerating coming down, then the shaft flexes at the top. It flexes more initially at transition, and then it starts to recoil, and then it can actually get out ahead. So the shaft starts flexing the other way, and then you end up hooking shots and all sorts of problems. So swinging is it's a protocol that works. It's a very good way of doing it if you're able to do it. So the hitting objective would be to have, as the shaft flexes at transition, now you're going to maintain what we call holding that shaft flex. So that shaft is flexed, and you're going to hold that all the way to the ball and try even beyond. So you're taking out the timing element of the straightening out of the shaft. It's a little bit more of a muscular type of direct sort of engagement of the shaft. And we do this is what I teach, or we teach here at Advanced Ball Striking, because I believe it to be a far superior method, much easier to repeat this method. And it's a kind of thing where you could take some time off, not play for a few weeks or a couple of months or whatever, and pick the club back up and hold shaft flex through the strike and hit the ball pretty well right away. Plus, when you're holding the shaft flex, it puts more feel in the right hand, so that you can actually feel in your hand and in your body exactly where that club face is at as it's coming into the ball, as compared with timing it, where once the shaft releases from its original flexation, starts releasing, you feel a pull this way on the shaft. It's kind of a longitudinal acceleration. You feel that, but you don't have the feel in the right hand as to the awareness of where the club face is at. And this is the problem that I think we're really having with the modern drivers, because you have to use a different kind of technique to hit and hold shaft flex into the strike with a long, lightweight club. People just simply can't turn fast enough with the body to be able to do that. So they lose the shaft flex, and then they can't feel where the club face is, and then the ball, loses control. So we teach the ball control stuff. That's what we think is best for golfers at really all levels, to be able to get control of the golf ball. So two different objectives, and then there's techniques for swinging. Things you need to work on. There's things that are in common. Like both hitters and swingers would benefit from flattening the shaft at transition and getting on the 430 line, which is what we teach. So right there, that's compatible with both but the way that the release is happening would be different. So hitters would have a different kind of release than swingers would. Swingers are more relaxed with the right arm would be like straightening, elbow would be like straightening through, very relaxed, kind of a throw, relaxed roll over. Lot more. The toe is much more active, closing through the strike in a swingers protocol, which I think is dangerous in my opinion to do that, because if your timing is good, then fine. So that's why some days you hit it great, and other days you just map it all over the place because the timing's off, and we take that timing out of that. And if we're maintaining shaft flex and we're locking up the right elbow as we go through the strike with a hit, then it's just very consistent, just every time, every day, bam, 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 bam. But as soon as the right elbow starts straightening and you get the toe moving over, the toe is getting very active going through, then you bring all that timing, and it's not as consistent. I think over the course of time, not as consistent and not as good a method, unless you are a master swinger and you have that ability to do that. I think it takes more concentration to do that, and more mental control and all these sort of skills. But some people have those, but I like golf to feel easy. I, don't, I want it to feel simple. I want to be able to take time off and pick up a club and go out and not make a fool of myself. So
Equipment differences. Would there be any differences in the choice of flexes for shafts?
yeah, yeah, I think so. That gets into a whole nother thing, but generally, if you're hitting method and holding shaft flex, then I think you'd want to move into stiffer shafts, actually, for sure. Swingers, looser shafts, and your timing, a lot of play in the shaft. And you see these swing aids. They have like what's that? That orange loose shaft or whatever. That's kind of like a swingers thing, So a lot of there's a lot of drills and techniques and teaching methods that really get confusing for people, because if you don't know whether you're hitting or swinging, like a teacher may be teaching swinging, but he doesn't really know there's even a difference between hitting and swinging, and is telling you swing this and do this and this, and this is all swinging stuff, but it wouldn't work for a hitter, or vice versa. So and I think I'm hoping that at some point that the difference between hitting and swinging just becomes a common um, understanding in the teaching community, where teachers just understand, okay, are you a swinger, are you a hitter? Let's work from there. And I don't think we're there yet in the teaching.
A lot of the online
Yeah.
online instruction, it's giving tips and so forth, and people, they don't understand what they're doing, and something can work or it can really be disastrous.
Yeah, yeah, Neil, you started as a swinger, and then you came over and worked with us at Advanced Ball Striking for a few years, and then switched to a hitter. So maybe you could just share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, the bit where you sort of show the active toe, I mean, for me, a swinger's club face would be sort of doing this through impact, right? Sort of going from open to close very, very quickly.
Yeah,
That for me would be a swinger.
and that's what you were doing
Yeah, just
before, right?
flipping it over. So the club face would only be pointing at the target for the briefest of, a fraction of a second,
Yeah,
if you're lucky, Whereas a hitter, you would be
yeah,
sort of open, but then square, and then trying to keep it square for just that little bit long. I know it's sort of moving off square there, but open, square, staying square, certainly square to the shoulders, and just trying to keep it square as long as possible. I mean, Trevino famously said that. I think he said that in one of his books, that he only kept the club face looking at the target for about an inch longer than anybody else. But he said it made a huge difference to his ex-wife's bank balance. That's the way Trevino put it, and I think that just sums it up really nicely. So a swinger would be wide open, flipping it over closed. And also another thing, which obviously we talked about on ABS, is what the right arm would be doing through impact, and a, a swinger would be sort of rolling everything over like this, with the right arm straightened
yeah,
out, whereas a hitter would just be sort of rotating the body, rotating the pivot, and trying to keep the right arm bent to create that club face stability. Now that takes a huge amount of work. You can't just think that and do that. You've got to train for it. Um, so I mean, is that the big benefit of
Yeah.
working on being a hitter? You just have the club face looking at the target for that little bit longer. That's the way I
Oh,
feel it is.
yeah. I mean, quite a bit longer. I mean, Trevino said that he tried to keep the club face just looking at the target for as long as possible. And Mo told me the same thing
Yeah, I
directly.
mean, I think
When
most
I
thought he
knew
could
Mo
do it for
and
like 21
Mo.
inches after the ball or something like that, which he could. He didn't, but he thought he could. At least that's what he was trying to do.
And just a quick little side shoot off this. I think Hogan was a hitter, and Hogan had the club face looking at the target just so long after the strike. But in his book Five Lessons, he's got these images of the right arm throwing out and the club face rolling over and all this. And I think that it's that like a little landmine in there to mess people up or whatever. But it's definitely not what he was doing at all. So in that book, it's just one of those things. I just look at that and it's like I just don't. I'm not really sure why he put that in there because it certainly isn't what he did. So as I'm working on the Hogan module stuff and trying to, I'm going to be bringing that out fairly soon. I've been saying it for a while, but I'm just trying to get it all right. But I'll just try and correct that stuff and get things so it's all correct. So because hitting and swinging, these are two polarized, realities here, protocols for the golf swing.
But both can work, right? I mean, lots of great players were
Yeah,
swingers. Yeah.
I think so. But I think the greatest ball strikers, the guys that were just consistently great strikers, were hitters pretty much. I mean, Mo was a hitter, George Knudson was a hitter, Ben Hogan was a hitter, Sam Snead was a hitter. Roberto Di Vincenzo was a hitter. Even on the senior tour, Chichi Rodriguez, Bernhard Langer. I mean, there's so many. But yeah, you have some swingers. Jack Nicklaus, swingers release. So there you go. But I'll say this about Jack. I mean, he made it look difficult. A lot of concentration. There's Jack. He's a super concentrated. Where Trevino would just be up there, tap the thing down, he just made the gallery and just I feel like I'd rather have golf feel easy to do rather than I've got to get into my ultimate zen mode here, just got to concentrate, just keep everything relaxed. And I think hitting holds up better under pressure because you're working with contracted muscles, so everything's tight and just boom boom. Where hitting, you're trying to relax and everything depends upon relaxation and free flowing and all that stuff. People don't feel like that when they're under pressure. You get under pressure, you shorten your breath, your muscles tighten up. With hitting, that's a technique that works really well for the body feeling like that. I actually would even hit the ball better under pressure. I'd be nervous, same nervousness, whether I was under a hitter or a swinger, but I had a technique as I moved over to hitting. It's like, oh, well, this works really well under pressure, not because my brain was better, just because my technique was better. So I would say if you're a golfer that when you get nervous under pressure and you start just spraying the ball all over the place, it's probably because you're a swinger.
Would you say most people are swingers? I mean, most amateur golfers that I see, and they're all
Yeah,
swingers.
amateur golfers, most people are swingers in the amateur.
So
Yeah,
why
most
is that?
people.
Why do people start off as swingers?
I think they're taught that, I think in the general consensus amongst golf, basic, driving range pros teaching people and stuff is that, you want to feel relaxed and, let the club do the work and, just, just swing it back and swing it through and be relaxed and, breathe and just enjoy the game and just relax and all that stuff. And all that kind of stuff is like swingers sort of approach. And it is those are good tips if you're a swinging teacher teaching swinging players, right? So I mean, this is not bad. It's just that I think that's why most people are doing that. But I think there's a more advanced method, and if you look at the greatest strikers, you're going to see mostly are hitters.
Yeah, I mean,
Gary Player, just list goes on and
yeah, I
on.
mean, Knudsen was an interesting case because he was obviously definitely a swinger when you watch his swing on video. But in his book, if you read his book, it's almost like he's telling people he's teaching swinging.
You're talking about
No,
Jack
Knudsen,
Nicklaus?
George Knudsen.
Oh,
He's a
Yeah,
hitter, but yeah, but if you read his book,
yeah, it's not a very hitter's action for sure. But I know he talked about, um, there were things that he mentioned that were about, relaxation and that sort of thing. But you have, again, you have to interpret these things correctly. Like you he for Knutson, for him to relax may have been the feeling of slotting the club through transition, because what we teach in module 5, hand attitudes, and having a suppleness in the wrist. So he may have been referring to that kind of feeling, but he certainly didn't have a swingers really. He wasn't throwing his right arm out and flipping it over. I mean, not when he was playing his best golf. And in the it got a it got a little bit extended out with the right arm when he was doing his teaching video, and I think he was towards it was long past his playing career and stuff. He's down at the Bahamas teaching that, and he did the natural golf swing thing. So it wasn't quite as tight, as the stuff you see when he was doing the Shells matches back in the '60s. Now, he was hitting, that was a pivot driven hit with a frozen right arm going through the strike and all that. So he was, but again, he knew that method. He studied Hogan's method. He was probably the most Hogan-like swing. If you look at it from a Hogan type fundamentals, I would say Knudsen would probably be the guy that was
Right, of Hogan swinging on the practice tee and Newton right there watching him.
yeah. Well, he said he just watched Hogan any chance he got. But yeah, so you have to look at it that way. Like where are you feeling relaxation? I mean, is it in transition? Because we would teach a firmness in the body but a suppleness in the wrist, which could be interpreted as relaxed in the wrist, right? So it's like relaxed, but as you're coming through, then you're going to hit and you're going to strike. Or you could be talking about, you hit hard and then you come up into your finish and then you feel relaxed as you're, after it's all done, then there's like a relaxation. Because Knudsen talked about balance being really critical, right? So you want to be swinging in balance and finish on flat on the left foot, not rolled over onto the heel. I mean, I'm sorry, onto the left side of your foot. But he liked to finish flat on the left foot like Hogan did, and then in that, also, Knudsen was big on that you've got to give up control to get control, which is kind of true. I mean, you've got to just, I think, but again, how do you interpret that? But I would interpret that as, just committing to the shot. Like when you get over it, just you decide the shot you're going to hit, and then you just commit to it. You just give up trying to, overly control anything, and just like, here's the ball, there's my target, and just do it quickly and just let it go. Like boom, boom, bam. So kind of giving up control rather than like trying to control and steering it down the fairway and all that. So that's how I interpret it as a player, and being in tournament situations where you feel like, yeah, you just got to let it go, but you can still use a hitting technique to do that, I guess, if that makes sense.
But talk a little bit about pressure in the hands, and it's one thing you talk a lot about on the ABS modules about how you can have pressure in your hand. How would a hitter feel pressure in his hand because he's holding shaft flex compared to a swinger who releases the shaft flex? How are you going to feel the pressure in your
Yeah,
hands
that's a
differently?
that's a great question. Yeah, it is a difference. So the swinger is really gonna tend to move towards lighter grip pressure, because you're really trying to not interfere with the centrifugal motion going through the strike. So you really want the hands to be very kind of relaxed, and that helps the club swing through and get the inline action of the shaft, so it's straightening and coming in line, that timing element at impact. The problem with that to me is under pressure, people tend to tighten up, right? So if you tighten your grip on the downswing, you're under pressure, and all of a sudden it's tight. Now the shaft isn't, you are interfering, and it isn't releasing in the same way that it was when you're on the first few holes or whatever. And then now you're down the last few holes and you're nervous, and now you're tightening up, and now you're interfering with the centrifugal force. of the release and the timing of the closing of the shaft and the straightening of the shaft and the closing the club face and all this. So it, what I teach and what we work on at Advanced Ball Striking is to learn a skill set to where you have a very firm grip on the club, and then we keep a constant grip pressure. So if you're gripping it firm, but you have a flexibility in the wrist, this is a skill set. This isn't just something that's easy to do, because most people grip it firm and then their wrists are tight too, right? So we have all these drills, and especially module 5 that we work on, that we learn the skill set to have a firmness in the fingers, but a flexibility in the wrist, so that the shaft can flatten at transition. But yet, as we're coming through the strike, we don't. If we do tighten up, well, we're already tight, right? So that's why, again, why this holds up under pressure. I think everybody wants a golf swing that holds up under pressure. Not everybody's playing in the U.S. Open, but there's just as much pressure on your little game on the weekend with your friends or whatever. I mean, it's big stuff for people. I mean, you want to beat your friends or whatever, whether it's for a couple of beers or a couple of bucks or just the pride of like, hey, I beat my buddy again for the 6th time in a row or whatever. You want to do as well as you can, whether it's club championship or just any little event that you're playing, or it's just you're out with a friend and you just want to beat him or whatever. And people get nervous. And so having good technique can really help deal with those situations, and having a constant grip pressure from at address, from the top down through the strike and into your finish, constant grip pressure in the fingers doesn't change, right? So if with a swinger, you might be kind of loose, okay, I got to relax the hands, and they're kind of loose at address. You get to the top, and then it's like you feel the club doing something weird, and you tighten your grip up, and now you're interfering with what's happening on the downswing. Much better to just have a constant grip pressure, boom, locked in, boom, boom, simple. Just eliminate all the timing elements, taking all that out of it. Just not having to remember as much, like, okay, my grip needs to be light, and then I'm going to tighten it here, and I'm going to loosen it here, and then I'm going to, and all this, there's just eliminate all of that and just learn a good technique to where you just have a constant grip pressure, and you can use this from driver to wedges, irons, putting, everything.
But,
So I think it's better and more reliable and
but
repeatable.
a hitter, if you can hold shaft flex all the way to the ball, then you're going to feel the pressure of that shaft all the way to the ball and beyond, aren't you?
Yes. So again, so that in that firm grip pressure, so we're building the stress on the shaft as we're coming down, and we accelerating, we're turning faster. We delay the acceleration, we do delay the rotation of our shoulders and our body and the forearm rotations. All that's happening down near the bottom. We're turning that all on and then applying, the flexation of the shaft, right through the strike. And what that does is, it's like if you took a golf club and you pinned it up against a wall and you pressed and flex the shaft back, notice where you feel the pressure. You're going to feel it in the right hand mostly. You're going to feel all this pressure, and then you can go, all that pressure, I can tell exactly where the club face is at, because there's a direct line of connection through the steel shaft. And then again, that there's a whole nother argument there about shafts. I mean, should shafts be loose? Should they be firm? Should they be heavy and thick? Should they be thin and light, or whatever? All these sort of things. But that's your connection from the club head to your hands, is that shaft. And I'm going to argue against these real thin-walled, lightweight shafts. They don't give you as much feel. They don't give you that precision connection that you can feel every. And when you get to a level of top-level ball striking, you need to know exactly where that club face is at. Exactly. When you're talking about, I'm hitting a 1-iron or whatever, I'm going to hit that thing out there and draw it 5 yards or whatever. I better know exactly where that club face is at. So, if the shafts are torquing a little bit, they're too thin, they're too light, and there's too much twisting going on, and that's a little bit of that, hey, it's lighter, I'm hitting it farther, but, again, on the other side, like most things in life, you get this and you lose something else. So I'm not as big on the lightweight shafts and stuff as a lot of people are talking about. Yeah, distance, okay, yeah, I hit a little further, but, I want to know where the ball's going. I want to have control over that golf ball all the time. And I think most golfers are going to benefit from getting ball control over picking up an extra 5 yards or something. I mean, it's just not necessarily going to take shots off your score. But if you control the ball, you're putting it in the right part of the fairway and you're moving around. I'm drawing it into that back left pin placement or whatever, and it's skipping in, and I'm spinning it this way or that, and all that stuff, that fine tuning control stuff. You want to have your equipment set up correctly for to maximize that.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about pressure in the hands and stuff like that, and holding shaft flex. I mean, one of the first things I read by you on the original IC golf thread was quite early on in that thread was when acceleration reaches zero, the shaft will release. I think I'm quoting you pretty well there.
That's right.
And that was a huge
Mm-hmm.
light bulb moment for me, just thinking about that. When do you want to stop accelerating the shaft? Because you're gonna lose that pressure in your
Never.
hand. I mean, for me, as a swinger, when they get down to about sort of halfway between P3 and impact, they stop accelerating, the club shaft releases, and you're just a passenger at that stage. You've lost control of the shaft and the club head. Whereas a hitter, if you can accelerate to beyond the ball, you've stayed in control of that club face to beyond the ball.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that where you said a passenger, because that's exactly what it's like. It's like you're a passenger. Are you? Would you rather be driving the car, or do you want to be a
Yeah.
passenger in the car? I mean,
And as soon as
it's more relaxing, yeah, passenger, whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to get control of what's going on, I think you're better to be driving the car. If you're a good driver.
I mean, as soon as the shaft releases, that's it. You've lost control, and it's gonna release this way. It's probably gonna toe dip even more if the shaft isn't put. I mean, a swinger would probably need all of their shafts perfectly spine aligned and all this sort of stuff. Where a hitter, it would absolutely make zero difference how well your clubs are built, almost,
Yeah,
because if you're pressuring the
yeah,
shaft all the way into the ball, you've got the feel in your hands from acceleration, not necessarily from velocity. And you're putting that feel in your hands, you're putting that control through your hands, through the shaft into the club head. That was a huge light bulb for me, reading that when acceleration reaches zero, the shaft will release. That I remember reading that for the first time, and that was the moment I decided I wanted to be an ABS student all those years ago.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, how just one little concept like that can change somebody's mind. But you had to have been in a situation where you were ready to receive that information too. Like you could probably feel like, yeah, that's what it feels like, because people from the top tend to over accelerate and put so many. You see all these people being taught to just open early, right, just right from the so you're spending everything to just flex that shaft, and as it's coming down, as soon as it stops accelerating, then that shaft releases. It goes from flexed back to of it's releasing, and that's happening on the downswing, and then you lose all that feel in the right hand, and then you're just a passenger. It's just like you said, passenger. Just okay. Well, let's hope that thing hits the ball, straight with a straight face and coming at the right angles and all that. And it's just kind of a guess. And when I was a swinger growing up, I mean, it always felt like that. Like I was just, okay, I load it up, I bring it down, it's the shaft is releasing, I'm trying to time it into the ball. And the days when I was on, yeah, I could hit it great, that's fine. But on days when I was off, I just couldn't understand, like why some days I could hit the ball so good and other days just hit the ball so bad. It's like, what am I doing? I'm just hitting it all over the place. And I feel like, what am I doing different here? And it was just this constant frustration. I mean, my college career was, I had, I won some tournaments, and oh yeah, John Erickson, All Americans, great. Look what he did. He won this tournament, he won that tournament, whatever. But there were times when, just missing cuts and just, shooting, 70, 76, 78 or something, or, where's John this week? Oh, he's having an off week or whatever. And it's miserable. I didn't like that. The timing stuff, trying to get my timing back. Okay, got my timing back. Just, once I learned to hit, it's like just eliminated all that. I just hit it good every week. So it was really just a matter of what weeks am I putting good now, right? That was the difference. Like, okay, I'm making putts this week. Trying to get those two worlds to line up, like I'm hitting it good and I'm putting good, or I'm hitting it bad and putting bad. Or I'm hitting it bad, but I'm putting good. Okay, I played okay. I hit it bad, putted good. I hit it good, putted bad. But if I got to where I just hit it good all the time, that was easy. Just hit it good all the time, and then just wait for the putting, right? So okay, putting's good this week, bam, win the tournament. Putting's a little bit off, yeah, I'm finishing still top 20 or something or whatever, making the cuts or whatever. But when you see, like Tiger when he was playing his best golf. I mean, he didn't go like years without missing a cut or something like that. I mean, he didn't have a swinging technique, with his irons particularly. With a driver, it's a whole nother conversation with a modern driver. So it's because light and long, and it's a whole different kind of a thing. It's not nobody's really mastered it. Nobody's just gone out with a modern driver, just lasering that thing and never missing a fairway or whatever. Again, you see one week they're on, the next week they're off, that kind of thing. Because it is more of a swinging technique where the right arms starts throwing out. You don't really see anybody doing like a Hogan release in the modern age, to where you're just going to be lasering that thing down.
Why is it with a modern lightweight driver you can't do sort of what Hogan did with his, 40
well,
15 driver?
You could, but you'd lose some distance doing it that way. Because if you're going to freeze up the right elbow going through the strike, okay, to get control of the club face, and you're going to accelerate late, so you're going to come down, kind of slow, and then lock that up and accelerate through. You have to turn really, really fast to get up into the 110, 120 mile an hour club head speeds. I don't see anybody capable of turning their rotation that fast. So what happens is, because the clubs are so long and light, you're having to go with more of like a fly swatter kind of thing. It's like an arm, like they talk about this is like speed training and stuff like this. It's not a pivot. They're not doing a pivot driven. You're seeing guys just kind of whipping their hands, and the body's just kind of facilitating this independent disconnect of the arms and the hands. And that's the problem with a modern driver is, yes, you can hit the ball farther doing that, but you're just never going to have the control. You just can't. If you have a connection between the club face and your rotation, and you're working that, and it's just like every time, bam, 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 like this, we don't see that. You've got a disconnect going on. You got a fly swatter. Somebody's like swatting at it, like this. It's just going to be inconsistent, and that's why I don't really watch a lot of the modern golf, because I grew up playing golf where the emphasis was on ball control, controlling it. And it wasn't, gee, how many fairways did I hit? It's like hitting it down the correct side of the fairway. US Open used to be high rough, narrow fairways, and hit the ball into the correct side of the fairway within a narrow fairway. That precision, driving, accuracy, irons off the tee, getting everything, I think that game still exists for most people, because a lot of people play narrow courses, and they would benefit greatly from hitting the ball straight and positioning the ball in the fairway. In the U.S. Open, you used to see a lot of short hitters winning U.S. Opens. Curtis Strange, Corey Pavin, people like that. Lee Janzen won, Andy North, guys that were not real long hitters winning U.S. Opens. And because of the ball control issue. So that's what it was all about. Now I don't even know what's going on at U.S. Open. I mean, just wide open. I don't
want to bash Bryson, but I think he won the U.S. Open on Sunday, and he hit 4 fairways on Sunday. I think I've got that right.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I heard about it, but but I think I would say, from what I know about Bryson, and he's a pretty smart guy from what I understand, and he's basically figured out that if he hits it as far as possible, he's better to have a wedge in from light rough or something, to be wedging in, than some guy that's back in the fairway 30, 40 yards behind him. He feels that statistically he's going to be better to be off the fairway closer to the green than 40 yards back. And I think there have been statistical studies about this, and they're showing that that is in fact the case. So he's actually smart doing what he's doing. He's thinking, I'm going to hit it past everybody. I'm going to get it closer to the green. But if that's the direction that the USGA wants to go with their US Open, then that's fine. It's their tournament, and that's what they want to do. And they changed it from, it used to be narrow and precision and thick rough, and you had to hit it straight. Now it's some totally different thing. And okay, that's what they want to do. But as a golfer and as an instructor and a practitioner of the highest levels of ball control, which is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the great strikers, meaning strikers that hit the ball straight and can shape the ball correctly. And I think it's just much more interesting in the articulations of that than it is just hit it as far as you can and get down there. I understand what Bryson's doing, and I give him credit for that. I mean, he's trying to win golf tournaments. So, but if Bryson were to have played in the era that I was playing, and when U.S. Opens were like this narrow, then Bryson wouldn't be winning the U.S. Open. He'd be missing the cut. Probably wouldn't be qualifying for the U.S. Open. But based upon what's happening now, he's doing things in the best. So that again, it's just different. But again, coming back home with that concept, I still think most golfers are going to do better getting control of the golf ball than they are trying to pick up an extra 10 yards or whatever with some club or just swinging really hard at it or whatever. So just a thought.
So let's talk a little bit about like Hogan and Trevino. Hogan and Trevino, both hitters. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would watch and say, well, that's completely different swings. But I mean, if you look at them sort of between impact and P4, they look very, very similar. So, I mean, what were they doing? I mean, obviously, a lot of the backswing stuff we talked about last week said that wasn't really that fundamentally important. So, what is it that they were doing that was the same, that was really important?
Well, both, Hogan and Trevino were hitters, and they're both holding shaft flex through the strike, and they both were really deep on the 430 line at P3. So, just for people that are just checking us out for the first time, that when we talk about P1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're talking about where just reference points as to where the club shaft is parallel to the ground. So when you take the club back, when the shaft gets to the first parallel to the ground, that's P1 at the top. We'll just call that P2. P3, the shaft parallel to the ground before impact through the strike, and then to P4, the shaft parallel after impact. And then at 5, we don't really seek a parallel position, but we'll call that PV5, P vertical 5. So I really like what Mo did where he had the shaft going more skyward. Hogan was like that too. So we call that PV5, P vertical 5.
And these P's are not positions. They're just where it's just so we can talk, just so we can communicate.
Yeah, I mean, other teachers talk about they get into the perpendiculars and all that. Whether it's perpendicular, I think it's just unnecessary. I mean, we can reference everything. We just try and keep it as simple as possible, like P1, P2, 3, 4. Yeah, those in between are more like just passageways through. We're not really needing to be concerned about that. But getting back to Hogan and Trevino, so. Both Hogan and Trevino were very deep on the 430 line. I mean, that shaft was the 430 line being if you had your target line and the ball is in front of you. Let's say here I've got a golf ball here, and you're looking down at this golf ball. So you would have 12 o'clock here, 6 o'clock here, 3 o'clock here, 9 o'clock here. So the 430 would be right here. So this is because we're on an inclined plane and our eyes are above the plane looking down, we see the club moving in a circle. If our eyes were in line with the ball like this, then we would just see the club going back and forth. But because the ball's down below us and we're looking down, we see it moving in a circle. So as it's coming down that circle, we see this 430 line. So we really want to feel like everything is coming down at this 430 line, and then so that shaft is coming down the 430 line, and right at the last second, the club face closes and hits the back of the ball at 3 o'clock. Roughly be like a little bit 3:15, because as the club face, we want the ball to be leaving the club face square at separation. So the ball does stick on the club face for a little bit. So it's kind of the visual would be kind of like here, it compresses and then it takes off square. But for the most part, in a general thing, we would think about coming down at the 430 line, and then the club face comes around and hits at 3 o'clock on the ball, and then it takes off. So that's very critical for us visually. We want to Knudsen talked about hitting out of the right hip pocket. So again, we're talking about interpretation. What does that really mean? Well, I would interpret that as clearly he's talking about the 430 line, that shaft coming out of the right hip pocket that we would call the 430 line that we would see, as we're coming into the golf ball. So when I say deep on the 430 line, what I'm talking about is this 430 line's almost like 5 o'clock, or really getting in there deep on the 430 line. So the deeper you are on the 430 line, most people say, "Oh, you're going to hit the ball out to the right doing that." Well, if you got fast rotation coming through, good form rotation coming through the strike, then you can get that thing to come around and close. But you have greater range of motion as that shaft is on the 430 line. You're increasing the range of motion. The more that thing is deeper on the 430 line, and then if you have the tools to get the what I call pulling the sword out of the stone. It's you're pulling that thing out of the 430 line and whoosh, coming. That's where that speed and that whip and holding shaft flex and all that stuff. This is what all these great strikers do. Your average golfer is just kind of coming down over the top. They're seeing a 3 o'clock line, right? So the typical golfers looks. I want to hit the back of the ball, so their hands are coming down towards the back of the ball, and then the club rotates around and then they hit a pull shot. It starts off to the left and slices. So that's what's happening to most golfers. It's all optical illusion stuff, and that's what we straighten out with the advanced ball striking class. So we get everybody to understand these things, teach the protocols and the drills and everything that they got to do so that they can do things correctly. And it all starts with ground pressures and cohesive body tensions and all this stuff. And it just takes a while. You learn it, but given time, it's just like anything. But what I'm confident about with the advanced ball striking class is that it works, and we have 100% success rate for people that have graduated the class. No, we haven't had one student ever say, "Oh, gee, I'm not hitting the ball as good as when I started." It would be impossible for that to happen.
So hang on, right. So getting back to Hogan and Trevino, P3 to P4. So they got the club on the 430 line, so they're coming away from the inside. Then what did they do to P4? That was very similar. But what that made them, probably the two best ball strikers of all time.
Yeah, you got, well, for one, heavy clubs, flat lie angles, no offset, all that stuff. So Trevino basically just put the ball back in the stance, and so he rotated his plane line. So if you're square here, if you put the ball back in your stance, then this line is going to be pointing more out to the right. So he just moved the ball back, aimed left, got it deep on the 430 line, and then just during his main playing days, he went with his steeper shoulders to get under and hold that thing off, which worked fine. He was a little shorter hitter that way because he didn't have the rotational speed. I mean, if he had been taught to turn level going through it when he was young, then he probably would have been a longer hitter. I'm sure he would have because everything else was there. But again, it wasn't the most important thing. He was more concerned with ball control, accuracy, shaping, and all that. So that worked fine. But what's interesting about Trevino is as he got older, got out on the senior tour, had success out there, and then beyond that, his shoulders are just turning level as much as anybody. Same thing with Hogan. He got a little bit pinched going under as he was younger, but as in the later years, he started just turning really, really level because it's hard on the back. I think Trevino had back surgeries and stuff, and Nicholas had back trouble, and the big reverse C and all that stuff. This is hard on the back, and it's not necessary to hit the ball well like that. In fact, you're going to hit the ball better, I think, with a level rotation because the left shoulder is traveling a greater distance if it's turning level than it is if it's going steep. It's not moving as far. But if it's turning level, it's moving farther and faster, and it's more powerful. And with the right protocols in place, then you just hit it even straighter, dude.
You talked about the rotated plane line. Trevino aimed left and played a push. I think we should clarify that when you're saying move the ball back, it doesn't mean some specialty shot hitting it low or chopping down on it. You're talking about
Yeah, so that in
still
other words, the
coming from the
depth of the
inside.
divot, the depth of the divot is going to be the same. So in other words, if you move the ball back and you just rotate this plane line out to the right, then you're still going to take that thin bacon strip divot, but you're just playing more off the right foot. You're not coming down steep at it and taking a big divot because you're hitting
Coming,
from
yeah,
there.
very shallow and from the 430 line, so everything has to be rotated to the right for a
Yeah,
right-hander.
and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So the whole idea that you have to play the ball off the left heel and or whatever it has to be, it just doesn't. It's just mythology. It just doesn't have to be that way. You've got a lot of players, in the modern era, like Bubba Watson. I think a guy, he's left-handed, but he put the ball, way back and hit it, aims. As a right-handed player, it would be as if he was aiming way left. He's a left-handed player, so he's aiming way right. But yeah, these are all things. I think it's what we teach is we teach how to play off different ball positions. So we just kind of break it down, simplify it again, just break it down into three, but just call it the standard ball position, which would be more neutral forward, to your mid ball position, to your back ball position. So we learn to hit off all three of those positions. And then we learn how to draw and fade the ball off those three positions. So you learn to hit draw, straight, and fade off the standard, off the mid and the rear ball position. So you can, if it's back in the stance, but you've rotated your plane line out to the right, we want to be able to draw the ball from there, hit it straight, push from there, and even cut from there. And what that does is that opens up this whole plethora of possibilities for us when we're on the golf course, as we can learn to hit shots off different side hill lies and wind conditions, and you got the ball below your feet, downhill lie and uphill lie, and all that stuff. Once you learn those things, you get out on the course, you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm comfortable here. I know how to hit the ball from here. Because sometimes, if the ball's below your feet with a downhill lie, I mean, you're not going to use the forward ball position. I mean, can't even access it really. So you kind of have to position it more back. But then if you don't know what to do from there, right? So if you learn these skill sets, how to draw it, hit it straight, or fade it, then you can look down there and say, okay, I'm going to position my body here. And that's just the experience you get from playing, getting out on the course and learning these things, these different kind of shots and stuff. Because I don't think golf should just be played off flat lies all the time. And that's the problem with driving ranges, is that it's just flat. And you get on the golf course and it's not like that. So that's, you see sometimes these great range players, oh, they just hit everything great on the range, but you get on the course and now they have to deal with all these other things out there and they're not as good.
So, do we want to wrap it up here, or and maybe have another
I've just got
episode?
one more.
Oh,
I've
one
just got
more.
one more question. Obviously, terms like hitting and swinging are from the golfing machine. Now, you obviously ABS, you teach hitting, but you don't teach the same hitting method as the golfing machine hitting method. Explain the differences between your method and the original golfing machine method.
Yeah, so again, I think hitting is best defined between holding shaft flex or not holding shaft flex. Okay, so you can use a pivot driven hit, and that's what we teach with the golfing machine. The hitting method was a right arm thrusting, was the using the right arm to hit and to push through the strike like this with what they call an angle hinge, where the club face would stay, again, trying to stay more looking at the target, like Trevino, like a pushing out kind of a thing. And I just don't think that technique is a good technique for much of anything, really. I don't find that useful at all for any kinds of shots, in my opinion. I messed around with that. I was raised in the golfing machine. I was one of the early prototypes of that back in the late 1970s with Bobby Clampett. And I think that shot with the right arm straightening through. Hogan, kept that right arm frozen. The right elbow is very problematic in the golf swing. And that's a swinger's thing, throwing that thing out. With the golfing machine swinging method would be both those methods had the right arm straightening out. See, that's where I had problems with that. When I got to the point where I realized that's not that there's another way. There's a third way, and the third way to do it would be what Hogan did, where he had the right elbow, locked up through the strike. And there's a famous quote or interview, I think, with Johnny Miller, and Johnny Miller was on the range with Hogan, and they talked, and Hogan was telling Johnny, he said, you just the right elbow, it's just like a steel rod just going through the strike, and Miller was like, wow, that's something new. What's that, right? But that's what Hogan was doing, and you see that with Knudsen doing that, and so yeah, there's a difference. The TGM people would talk about hitting with straightening the right elbow out with what we'll call the angle hinge, where the hands are not rolling over. It's kind of like a push through with the right elbow, and I just don't see that as a technique that's really even useful that much. I mean, so maybe there's some weird specialty shot you hit like that or something. I don't even find that actually. There's no shot that I would really need to apply that to. And working with, I worked with two of the great golfing machine instructors, Ben Doyle and Greg McHatton, which are great teachers, and they both really were teaching swinging, and they're the great swinging teachers, and they didn't teach hitting. And I think for that reason, I don't think they knew that wasn't it was a possibility to hit a golf ball like that, but not really that practical, I think is probably the right word for that. So
I think that's good for this episode. Any other thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts would be
good.
go on if anyone's listen to this and not really sure what the difference is. Go onto the forum. I mean, there's a thread called P3 to P4 where you can look at stuff like you can see Hogan and Trevino from P3 to P4, and they almost look identical apart from the steep shoulders for Trevino. And if you compare that to somebody, like a swinger like Ernie Els, where you see the right arm and the club face and everything rotating over, you can see the huge contrast in the two styles. So I would get along to the forum. There's lots of great stuff to read on there. Have a look at lots of the videos and GIFs on there, and you can see the difference between the two techniques. And just think about that club face being stable for just that little bit longer or as long as possible. Like you mentioned Mo before, John. I'm sure Mo said he could do it for like 20 inches after the ball, keep the club face looking at the target. That was his feel. It's been proven that he didn't do that, but that's what he thought. So it's certainly something worth trying to do. And it just makes sense in a practical level. If you've got that club face point at the target for even just an inch longer, then you're going to hit it straighter. And that's what we work on.
Yeah, so that's forum.advancedballstriking.com. The forum is great. We got, over 15, 16 years of information on there, and tens of thousands of posts. I mean, you can get lost in there for, probably years at this point. But it's just great. I mean, what a great thing to have happened, and just happened totally organically, really. It was just took off and kind of went viral, and just so much stuff. It's just something that's a great body of work with so many contributors, from all over the world, and great players, and Brad Hughes, just having a huge influence on that thread and all the great information he put down, and what a great player and champion he is as well. So
and Bradley's having a lot of success on the PGA Tour and the DP Tour, and which other tours. Lots of great success teaching these methods to tour pros and winning tour pros as well.
Yeah, it's great taking that stuff and putting it out there and winning tournaments.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, so I think that's it for this episode, and we hope to see everyone in the next episode.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Take care.